Can we fire it up with the number 14 team in our countdown title? We have a fight song for the K-State Wildcats. You're defending Big 12 champions.
Okay, I like it.
There you go.
It's spunky.
I've been to a game at Bill Snyder Family Stadium. Great spot, intimate, great fans, great people in Manhattan. It was a Texas game that was the game with Tom Herman as head coach. They got up 19-0, Texas did, and then they had to hold on for the win.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Hey, I've had to hold on for some wins versus K-State, too, all right? That purple kryptonite is real.
Yeah, real. And someone who knows about that purple kryptonite is Tim Fitzgerald. You can find him on Twitter at Life of Fitz, F-I-T-Z, sports writer, radio host, and publisher of GoPowerCat.com, covering all things K-State Wildcats. Tim, good morning.
Good morning to you.
Appreciate you doing this.
Thanks for joining us, brother.
Previewing K-State. Now, in talking about the Wildcats, I just had the assumption from Big 12 Media Days to now with the AP poll and picked to finish second in the Big 12. Is there a little chip on the shoulder for Chris Kleiman's team, having won the Big 12 last year and being down there at 14 behind Texas, not a top 10 team with 8 returning offensive starters, including the quarterback, plenty of experience coming back on defense as well? Is there a little bit of, that we're underrated, or that the way that K-State likes it to be?
I think it's the way they like it to be. It's been that way for a long time. It was that way under Bill Snyder, and it's kind of being that way under Chris Kleiman, too. And I think this is a pretty good K-State team, right? I say that understanding that Texas is wildly talented. They should be the champions of the Big 12 when it's all said and done. But, again, I'm falling into the category I got to see it to believe it. But this K-State team is really confident. They're fairly healthy, and they feel like they've fixed the holes in the lineup, so to speak, particularly on the defensive side. And I think people, keep in mind, Will Howard only started 6 games last year and played in 7. He was not the starting quarterback. He took over the job, and we've only seen the first glimpses of what I think this Will Howard as a starter could be. His confidence is extremely high. Everyone's talking about how accurate and efficient he is in practice. So I think we're excited to see if he can stay healthy. That seems to be a problem with quarterbacks at K-State, but if he can, what kind of year he can put up.
Yeah. Adrian Martinez, of course, got hurt in that TCU game, and that's when Will Howard entered the game and took off.
Speaking of the quarterbacks, what about Colin Klein and his development as an offensive coordinator with these quarterbacks? I love the way that he's kind of tailored the offense to each of those quarterbacks. When Martinez was in there and then with Will Howard, it seemed like it was a little bit different. What are your thoughts about Colin Klein and how he's grown into that position?
It'll be fun to watch him this year because let's be honest, Deuce Vaughn was a great play-calling crutch. Yeah. I mean, you could call the wrong play, and then he cuts it back against the grain and goes, 40 yards for a touchdown. So he's made life a lot easier, but I think everyone feels good also about the backups, the new running backs, DJ Giddens and Ward from Florida State, that they feel like those guys are going to plug that hole pretty well, and maybe that'll make Colin Klein call a little bit different game to fit their skills, because he does do a good job of calling plays to fit his players. So, will this mean more running, less running, more throwing to the running backs, less? It's just going to be fascinating to watch how all this plays out for Kansas State's offense, because this will be a brand new challenge for him, but he has grown so much as a play caller. And you can see his confidence grow as the season went on when some of his calls would start to work. He's a head coach in waiting somewhere. I mean, he's going to be a head coach, and Chris Klein was going to be at K-State for a while, it seems. So I'm not sure where that'll be, but someone will be really lucky to have Colin Klein in charge.
Yeah, Colin Klein, one of the fan favorites as a player there, obviously, at K-State, playing for Bill Snyder. I want to ask you about Chris Kleiman. I mean, obviously you covered the Bill Snyder years. You knew what a stoic leader he was, and just such a great program builder. What have you learned about Chris Kleiman? What is it about him that's similar to Snyder? What's different, and what has made him, a championship coach this quickly at K-State?
I think he understands, like Bill Snyder did, that the secret ingredient to a successful team isn't always X's and O's and talent. You got to have those. But with that, you have to have a good locker room. You have to have a healthy environment within your locker room. And that's something he has come in and really addressed and rebuilt for Kansas State. And plus, you got to have more depth. Kansas State was just running out of players, and they're finally building their their depth back up, if you can even do that in this age of the transfer portal. It's amazing how dissimilar those two guys are, and yet similar in how they arrive at putting together a team, because the teams look, quite a bit alike. Maybe the schemes are different, but they're still building it as a developmental program where you go get a guy like Deuce Vaughn, that's a 3-star nobody wanted. Go get a guy like Felix Anudike-Uzomah, who was barely a 2-star, but nobody knew who he was coming out of high school, and now he's in the NFL, a first-round pick. So they go about things in different ways, but they kind of come to how they do it in the same way, and it's just kind of fun to watch. And Chris is, very outgoing and handles the media in a little bit different way than Bill Snyder. So it's been a good transition for me, let's put it that way, in a selfish way.
Hey, Tim, a lot of people watching K-State keep talking about the offensive line and how good they expect the offensive line to be. How good do you expect the K-State O-line to be this season? Best in the Big 12?
Yeah, probably. You've got Cooper Beebe at one of the guard spots, at least for now, that might be the best offensive lineman in the country. Came back for one more season because his younger brother's an incoming freshman on the team, so he wanted to play with him. Now, they did have a setback in camp. Right tackle Christian Duffy's been injured. I'm not sure how long he'll be out yet, but he will be out a little bit, ending his starting streak of 40-plus games right there. So they will have a little bit of a problem at the right tackle spot that they'll move someone out. It might end up being Cooper Beebe because they're really strong at guard, because they did not expect him to be back. So they've got some depth there that they've had developed. So we'll see how that plays out. But, anytime you've got a veteran quarterback who's shown that he can play and an offensive line, I think your offense is going to be in pretty good shape if everyone plays like it should.
An interesting foundation up front. Tim Fitzgerald was with us talking all things K-State Wildcats, publisher of Go Power Cats on social media, and, of course, GoPowerCats.com, covering all things K-State. Hey, Tim, the conversation, obviously you come back with a lot, K-State does, as far as a team up front, as you mentioned, quarterback, Colin Klein in year 2. But they do replace some of their very, very best players, right? That's a challenge because Deuce Vaughn was so good, and Felix Anudike-Uzomah was the game wrecker, and Julius Brents at corner. You have to replace not as many players, and that feels good as a coach. At the same time, these were your best playmakers.
Yeah, they were. Julius Brents is an interesting case. He came in from Iowa a couple of years ago through the portal and was good and better as a junior, and then as a senior, he really erupted into a outstanding cover corner with long wingspan. Those guys are hard to replace. Now, what's interesting at defensive end is Brennan Mott was at the other end and ended up being one of the top sack guys in Big 12 play because so much attention was just applied on Felix. They just had to take care of him with double teams constantly. Well, they moved Khalid Duke back to linebacker after he came back from injury, and I think it was 2 seasons ago, Khalid was supposed to be the star defensive end and got injured and opened the door for Felix, and he never looked back. And now Khalid's back at defensive end, hopefully to slide into that spot and be productive. A little bit different defensive end, but also an explosive defensive playmaker. And Nate Matlack, the other D end, who I think is starting right now, comes back. He was injured all last season, you could tell. They're really good at defensive end. The surprise of the offseason was Daniel Green, their middle linebacker, saying he was coming back because we all thought he was done. So they've got some rebuilding at some key spots, but I also feel like they've got guys in position to step forward. I'll be intrigued to watch the back end of this K-State defense early in the season. That's
a good point. I want to ask you about the secondary, Tim, since you're on it, and we can just piggyback right where you left off. It's been a strength for them really under Chris Kleiman, I think. Do you expect this group to just continue to be really, really impressive? And I love the philosophy. They play that 3-high, 3-down defense a little bit, too, that gives Texas a ton of trouble.
Yeah, it's they changed to this 3-man front defense a couple of years ago. Chris Kleiman's never run it before. We still don't know who the coach was that he consulted. He won't share that information on how to best do this defense, but they've kind of figured it out. And those safeties are crucial. And what's been a really key cog in that is his ability to go out, particularly even at the FCS level, and identify guys that fit this defense really well. And they've been able to plug holes every time that they need someone to step in. They find someone. and they've done it again. We'll see if those guys develop, and if they have the same kind of luck that they've had in the past with developing players that just slide into that defense strong. Heavy hitting safeties are the key, and Kobe Savage, a Texas kid, is back from injury, and I expect him to have an all Big 12 caliber type of season.
Tim Fitzgerald talking K-State at number 14 in our countdown. Another Big 12 team. They were right in this very similar spot in the AP poll that was out just yesterday. They've got road trips to Oklahoma State in Stillwater in October, then Texas Tech the following week. Of course, they come to Austin November the 4th and have to travel to Kansas on November the 18th. Home Big 12 games with Iowa State, Baylor, Houston, TCU, along the way, and UCF. They get UCF to start their conference slate on September the 23rd. Tim, thanks so much. Any surprise? Will it be any surprise for you if you guys are back in the Big 12 championship game and maybe facing Texas for a Big 12 title? They could play twice this year.
Yeah, indeed they could. And I think Texas Tech, Texas, and K-State are the teams to watch. But boys who've been around this conference a long time, we know that anyone can pop up, and it was K-State that kind of popped up last year. But is it UCF or Baylor or Oklahoma with that soft schedule going to be back in the title game? It's going to be a fun season in the Big 12.
Yeah, and the last for Texas and Oklahoma, and then the new frontier to come. We're looking forward to continued talks with Tim Fitzgerald. Find him on Twitter at Life of Fitz, and certainly find all the K-State Purple Kryptonite conversation, as Rod B calls it, at Go Power Cat and at 24/7 Sports. Good stuff. GoPowerCat.com. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, boys.
Thanks,
Tim.
Tim.
There you go.
I'm following them right now. I like that. Boom.
Yeah,
he was good.
That's straight to the point. Good stuff. Good conversations. We love getting the insiders that cover that team and their teams day by day and know what's going on.